So we talk about social identities in our webinars and workshops, and we often refer to them in particular when talking about intersectionality. But we often get questions about, well, what does this even mean? What are social identities and how do they relate to intersectionality? Well, social identity and intersectionality are two concepts that are pretty inextricably linked. You can't truly understand intersectionality without first recognizing what social identities are. So essentially, social identity is how you see yourself and others based on the groups that you belong to. We're talking gender, race, religion, nationality, ability, class, and so many more. What's important to keep in mind, though, is that these groups have been socially constructed. That means they've been developed and defined by societies over time. So some of them we're born into, like our ethnicity, our nationality, or class, and some of them we're assigned, like gender and race. Some of our social identities will remain the same over the course of our lives, but often many of them change. For example, we can move between social economic classes. We can have changes in our ability status, or we can adopt different religious beliefs or identify as a gender different from the sex that we were assigned at birth. And while it may seem like all of our social identities are obvious, many of them aren't necessarily visible to others. For example, you can't necessarily see someone's socioeconomic status, even though we have certain ideas about what it means to look like you belong to one class or another. We can only really make a guess or inference about what class or socioeconomic status someone belongs to. When we consider things like ability, some folks have visible disabilities, while others may have invisible disabilities, like autoimmune conditions, pain disorders, different types of cancer, and so forth. So because we have multiple social identities, we all have a different lived experience. Two folks may look like they have similar identities, may actually have vastly different lived experiences because of the identities that we can't see. So we are not just the sum of our experiences as one identity, but rather the combination of all of our identities simultaneously. We exist at the intersections of those identities. So if I'm using myself as an example, I am a biracial Black American woman, but sometimes people assume I'm other races. I'm currently middle class, but I have moved through classes a few times in my life. I am cisgender and straight, but I tend to have stereotypically masculine hobbies and personality traits. I am not visibly disabled, yet I have underlying invisible disabilities that other folks can't see that impact the way I navigate the world. So I'm not just one of these identities. I'm all of them all at once. And my lived experience is therefore influenced by all of them all of the time. Dr. Kimberly Crenshaw coined the term intersectionality in the late 1980s as a way to explain the interconnected nature of social identities and how they contribute to each person's individual experiences with discrimination and oppression. A white woman, for example, will not experience racism, but she may experience sexism or ableism depending on her disability status. A Black woman, conversely, experiences both racism and sexism, which can be layered by other forms of discrimination based on other identities that she may hold. Her experience of racism will be different from someone who may be, say, Muslim or Asian. So her experience of sexism, or specifically what we call misogynoir, will also be different from the experience of sexism of a white woman or a Latinx woman because of the intersections of their race and gender. So social identity and intersectionality are two concepts that are best understood together. Intersectionality helps us realize that our experiences and challenges aren't just based on one identity. They're the result of a complex web of the multiple identities that we carry. This understanding is super important because it helps us see the unique struggles and privileges people have based on the multiple identities that we hold. So there are many different identities people hold, and we often narrow them down to what we call the big 8. So we're looking at ability, age, ethnicity, gender identity, race, religion, sexual orientation, and socioeconomic status. So let's define them very quickly. Ability refers to the diversity in our physical, mental, cognitive, developmental, and/or emotional abilities. This again can include visible disabilities as well as invisible disabilities. Age, your age is one of your identities that will change throughout the course of your life, whether we like it or not. And each stage of your life, you'll undoubtedly experience a range of discrimination and/or privileges based on your age. Ethnicity refers to a person's cultural background, which includes language, ancestry, or cultural beliefs. Note that ethnicity is different from race. Someone's ethnicity can be Zambian, but their race is Black. So race refers to the category society places folks in based on physical characteristics, mainly skin color. Religion looks at a system of faith or worship or belief in a higher power. Then your social economic status is typically based on your income or wealth status. It's often used interchangeably with social class, but social class also includes other factors like education, income, occupation, and so forth. Sexual orientation is your emotional, sexual, and/or romantic attractions. So whether you identify as gay, straight, bi, pansexual, or any other orientation. And then gender refers to a person's identification as a man, woman, transgender, or non-binary. This can differ from the sex you were assigned at birth, whether that's male or female. Gender includes cisgender folks whose gender identity matches the sex assigned at birth. Transgender, folks who identify differently than their assigned birth sex. Genderqueer or non-binary, someone who may see themselves as either both or neither male or female, or may not identify with the gender binary at all. And there are many more. So if you want to learn more about intersectionality and how we consider intersecting identities in the workplace, join me on Thursday, November 16th from noon to 1, where I'll expand on these concepts in depth.